Oh, here goes the other one. Alright, obvious disclaimer. Do not try this at home. I am not an expert. If you do, you're most likely going to burn your face off, blow your hands off, and burn your house down. Now, normally I make the casings inside because the casings are safe. But the composition, I add that outside. For the sake of the video, I'm going to do one shell indoors. I'll have only a very small amount of composition with me in small mason jars. I also have a fire extinguisher nearby, and that should get the safety Nazis off my bag. Okay? Alright. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm making basically small canister shells, 1.75 inches, to fit in your average consumer grade reloadable mortar tubes by hand, using printer paper of all things for the casing. This is just my own little technique. This is not a tutorial. I'm not telling you this is how you do it, because there's a lot better ways to do it. This is just the way I make a couple of these shells for fun. Here I'm using 6 rolls of printer paper cut in half, and I use a toilet paper roll as a former. I lay them inside the case, stagger them a little bit, and then I roll it so they push up against the outside edge of the tube. Then I go ahead and cut off a bit of cardboard to use as a plug. This first one's not going to be for strength, it's just going to hold the spillet, or time fuse. I think they're called spillets. Essentially a spillet's just a small roll of paper with black powder punched inside it. In this instance, I'm using about a 1/4 inch inside diameter with 3/4 inches of black powder that I tap down with a small wooden dowel and a mallet to compact it and compress it inside. 3/4 inches seems to work just fine for me, although it's a little long on the timing. I think I'm getting anywhere from 3 to 4 seconds of delay before the burst charge goes off, which is a little bit too long. But I'm afraid if I add any less powder inside the spillet, that the lift charge might actually blow through it and cause it to flower pot, where the whole thing just blows up in the tube. You'll actually get to see one of those later as I put a shell in upside down. Yes, it can be done. More on that when we get there. So with a bit of hot glue to seal off the spillet and the plug on both sides of the cardboard, I go ahead and push it down and center it best as I can. I push it down a little further than I plan on setting it before I hot glue it into place. Then I add a bead of hot glue all the way around to seal off the edges. I'll then pull the spillet so it's flush with the bottom of the casing, and this will help smear the hot glue around the edge and seal it off a little better. I'll go ahead and cut out 2 more of these cardboard plugs. One more is going to go on the bottom to help strengthen the casing, and the other one will go on the top when we're done. I will take about half of the roll, 3 to 4 layers, and begin to pleat it down. I believe it's called pleating. Basically just folding it around the spillet. I also have a little bit of hot glue underneath it to hold it in place. After the first layer is done, I add a little bit more hot glue, and then we'll go ahead and add the second plug. This plug will aid in strengthening the casing and protecting it from the lift charge. I'll use a piece of PVC pipe that's a little bit longer than the casing, so I don't put too much pressure on the casing as I push down on the top of this plug to help seal it with hot glue against the bottom. I'll rock it back and forth a few times to help push the hot glue into the cracks and crevices. Then one more bead of hot glue on top of the plug, and we pleat down the final layers. I'll add a bit of hot glue to be generous, and then once again push down on it with the PVC pipe. I will then open my container. I try to keep these closed when I'm not using them. And I will go ahead and prime the bottom of the casing. My spillets have a small gap at the top, so this will allow me to get a little bit of fresh powder on top, loosely packed. It won't add to the time delay, but it'll help ignite the composition in the casing. For filler and burst charge, I use Rice Krispies that I bake in the oven almost to the point you burn them. I get them real dark brown, and then I just shake them up inside some mill powder, which is just real fine black powder. I found using this technique, I don't have to use dextrin or anything. The black powder just sticks to the Rice Krispies and kind of gets inside the little crevices. Using this, much like using what they call rice holes, is essentially to help you save on composition and fill out the case as well as give it strength. You don't need to fill the entire case with black powder. That would just be wasteful and probably dangerous, as if we weren't dangerous enough as it is. But allowing the Krispies to take up the extra gaps in the air, or space in between the cartridge casing, whatever, you get the idea. It fills it up without using an ungodly amount of explosives. I just use Rice Krispies because they were readily available and easy to work with. I add a couple of stars, and then I add some more Krispies, and I pack it down real good with a wooden dowel. I'm not beating on it, I'm just pushing it down to help give the case extra strength and fit in some more stars. I finish off my stars, add a little bit more Krispies. Give it a tap to help, shake it up. And then I'll add a little generous amount of raw black powder to the top. I think this is like triple F granulate. It's all homemade black powder, homemade tiger tail stars. And there we go. And we go ahead and cap off the top. Seal it with some hot glue, and then start pleating it down just like the first time. Half layer, pleat, and then another layer, pleat it again. I have the case resting on top of a thick cardboard tube so that I'm not smashing the spillet against the table. I fill in the center gap with hot glue and then push it against a slick object. In this case, I'm just using the lid to a mason jar. The hot glue doesn't stick too well to the mason jar, and you can kind of rock it back and forth. Now we're going to go ahead and do what I believe is called spiking. Spiking these canister shells is generally done, I believe, for a bigger bang, a louder pop, but in my case, it's mostly to give the shell strength. Wrapping these shells with taut string will give them some strength while they come out of the tube, and it will give them a slightly louder pop. But without using any kind of flash charge, there's only so much you can get out of printer paper. Basically, I just set the string on the floor, step on it with my foot so I can keep it nice and taut. I'm not wrapping it around as tight as I can, I'm just wrapping it nice and tight. The last wrap I'll wrap around my finger so there'll be a gap for me to finish off the tie. Then I will tie it 3 times. I will pull it taut by rocking the string back and forth, and then keep the string in place with a little bit of hot glue. At this point, you have an explosive cartridge that you should certainly handle with absolute care. These will never have the kind of bang you'll get out of a consumer shell because they don't have flash powder, but if it goes off in your hand, you're still going to have a bad day. For my black match, I just use masking tape, fill it with black powder, and seal it off. Put a fuse on one end, and then I put a couple cuts in the other. The cuts are just something I do to help ensure that the flame touches the lift charge when it reaches the end and it doesn't get sealed off by the tape. I'll put one final wrap of paper loosely around the outside of the casing with a large gap at the bottom, which will allow me to put my lift charge. I'll seal off any crevices with hot glue and measure out about 8 grains of black powder. Once again, triple or quadruple F is about what I have here. I start the pleat at the fuse, ensuring that the end of the fuse is touching the black powder and not obstructed by the paper. And then, you guessed it, more hot glue. Push it down on a slick surface, and that's it. We have a ready-to-fire 1.75-inch canister shell, roughly. And these should slide down into your average mortar tubes, no problem. All the casings you're going to see fired are made the same way, they just vary on what's inside. Some homemade tiger tails of various different styles, some really good, some not so good. Jumping jacks, firecrackers, and sparklers cut up to be stars. Enjoy! Come on. And Sparkler Star, probably do that one first. Alright, first up, Sparkler Star. Woo! Oh wow. And it went out. I'm using my old paper fuses because I just needed to get rid of them. Some of them ain't that great. Those rolled stars worked a little better than I thought they would. Probably could have baked them a little longer though. Well, we did. See how well the cardboard plug held up both at the bottom and the top. And as designed, it's burst through the paper, and the spiking gives it strength and a little bit louder pop. Yeah, that was. Nice. Uh-oh. That might have blew up the tube. From the outside it looks okay. I don't feel any bulges. Didn't move the brick. Tube held up. These are fiberglass tubes. Probably just gonna go one. Nice. See the difference in those pump stars. Oh, here goes the other one. Beautiful. Everything here is freaking just drenched in humidity. I ain't gotta worry about no fires, that's for damn sure. Smoky. Nice. I think that one actually blew out the plugs. It went split like that, which could be a cool effect if I could get it to do that every time on demand. All right, boys, that's all she wrote. As much as I really want to light those other ones, I'm going to save them.